All right, what's up, everyone? We are going to talk today a little bit about when to throw back to fish that miss a bait. Now, that typically is talked about more or less for like topwater fishing, right? Throwing a frog, throwing a topwater, and then if they miss, like what you should throw back to them, okay? There's also some other baits, though, that this could apply to. Baits that maybe you don't really think about. One is like a swim jig, if you're reeling it high up on top of the water. That could also be like a spinner bait. I wouldn't throw the thunder cricket chatterbait in there because it's usually too far underneath the water, so you don't really know what's going on if you do get a bite. You can also throw like the shallow hybrid hunter in there because you can see the fish actually like swirl on a bait. I think they do it on jerk baits and things like that. You just don't see it, right? You can kind of see it on live scope, but you don't actually see it with your eyes. Any bait that's underneath the water or on top of the water and you can see a fish swirl on, a lot of times you can throw back to them. Now, I put out a couple videos here lately. One was where I was throwing a swim jig and a shallow hybrid hunter, and I even had a topwater in there.
Oh, God. Come on, come back. I can't believe you missed it.
Where it was just one of those days that it didn't matter what you threw, they were missing that bait.
Freaking ridiculous.
So I still caught some.
There he is, big one. Big one too, good one. Freaking hammered it. Took about 5 minutes to get a bite. I got one though. Thought he was bigger than that. Look at how he ate that thing. Freaking gone. Look at that. That's how they eat a hybrid hunter. That is how they eat that thing right there. Look at that. That's ridiculous. To have it that far down in there. Oh, shallow hybrid hunter. Heck yeah. I knew. All right.
Don't get me wrong, but there was a lot more misses than it was actual strikes. Now,
There she was. Come back and eat. That swirl. Yeah, I can't believe she missed it.
Now, what was crazy was a couple days earlier, none of that happened. Now, I kind of know why that happened. It has to do with the sun, and it was cloudy that day, and a lot of it was based on the structure you're fishing. I've seen it in a couple lakes. Surprising. Here's the craziest one. Lake Amstead. I've seen them miss baits on a cloudy day way worse than a sunny day. And I bring up Amstead because of how clear it is. It's a crystal clear lake. Sometimes you can see 20 foot deep. And so you would think that they would bite better on those cloudy days. I've seen it better in the sunny days. Like, they don't ever miss on sunny days. And you would have to think it's about eyesight, like that they can see it, but yet they can see so clear anyways. It's just a really strange thing that we think of clouds sometimes as them biting better in the clouds sometimes because they're more active, they're more willing to chase things, it brings them out of cover. That all can be true, but I've just seen some sunny days where they just don't miss baits, and cloudy days they do. Now, what you should throw back, or why I don't throw back sometimes. I've made so many videos, and I always put on there when fish like miss stuff and blow up on things and miss. I don't know enough about YouTube in the sense of I don't watch any YouTube. I don't know if anyone else is putting videos like that out there. I also throw a ton of topwaters. I throw a bunch of stuff, swim jigs and things like that are actually really cool baits. They're really cool because you can see fish blow up on them and eat them. I just like that style of fishing better. So I tend to make videos more about that stuff. That's the way I like to fish. I think it's really cool. There's nothing better than watching an 8, 9, 10 pounder come up and blow up, you know, or swirl or do whatever and eat your bait that you can watch that happen. Now, I guess since I do that, I have a lot of people ask, well, why didn't you throw back to that? Why didn't you throw this back, or why didn't you throw that back? Okay. Well, in that one video of me catching fish and missing fish on a swim jig and hybrid hunter, there's a couple things. One, it's the structure you're fishing. And two, and how that fish comes out of structure or where it does that. And I'll explain real quick to blow up on your bait. Okay. First off, grass. Now, normally I like to fish hydrilla. This was coontail. There was some hydrilla mixed in there, but it was a lot more coontail than hydrilla. Coontail and hydrilla grow very differently. Hydrilla tends to grow in stages on the way up. That's usually how we fish it. Coontail likes to grow to the surface faster. And so a lot of its leaves and its bulkiness to the plant is up higher in the water column, and it goes almost to the surface, sometimes about that far underneath the surface. It's very hard to work a bait down in the water column because of that. So you're only allowed to throw certain baits, which is why I was throwing a swim jig, a shallow hybrid hunter, even a topwater. Basically the only baits I could throw in that stuff at the time in the level it was growing at. A lot of hydrilla I can throw over because maybe it's 4 foot under the water, maybe it's 3 foot, whatever it might be. You can work tons of different baits through there. You can throw a red eye, you can throw a thunder cricket, spinner bait, all kinds of different stuff. So I was limited to the baits I could throw. Now, with that being said, and I've been fishing around grass my entire life. Grass fish are set up and bite so differently than most other fish on different other structures, right? And what I mean by that is this. They're usually waiting for something to come through the grass, and they usually streak out to go get it. So they might be in a hole, they might be right underneath the surface, but especially in coontail, they're not sitting on top of the grass. They'll sit on top of the grass in hydrilla, but like I said, coontail was almost to the surface. So they're sitting there in holes and stuff, and you're reeling this bait very quickly by them. It might be 4 or 5 foot away, and they're coming 4 or 5 foot in an instant to come eat that bait. Now, when they do this, and so many fish do this, when they eat that bait and they're coming from far away, rarely does a fish come from far away, bite your bait, and then just sit there. Chances are it didn't want it. Most of the time they do that, and then they swim instantly away, very quickly. Now, it's not wide open water there. There's almost not, they're not sitting there coming straight up. Not out of the grass. They rarely do that. They come from the side, they bite it, and then they're instantly trying to get back down in the grass. They're rarely looking for it again. And they're usually not coming out of a hole, as in this one hole in the grass, and that's where they're at. You see that a lot of times in frog fishing when they're throwing over mats, but this isn't a mat. This is grass. It's grass growing from the bottom to the top. There's when I say a hole, it's not a hole as in it's all hollow underneath. It might just be this one little spot where they can get, where they have a little ambush point. So throwing back to them, you can throw back to them all the time. I'm not saying they wouldn't eat what you throw back. I'm letting you know that they're not there. Like wherever you just threw, they're probably not there. Now, I think you have a way higher success rate if you threw, especially like if you threw a topwater over grass, to again throw a topwater again, because you're trying to call them up from this. They don't necessarily see it. They can kind of hear it and track it. Okay, so if you just threw a bait in there, like flipped a bait, you couldn't even throw a Cinco style bait or anything, or a fluke. You'd have to throw something to get down in there. If not, you're gonna have to throw something that gets their attention again. Hybrid Hunter, loud. It's a loud bait. Topwater, it's making a lot of commotion. You can maybe possibly draw them out again. But chances are, if you throw a bait, especially one that sinks very fast, it's going to the bottom in the thickest stuff. They're probably not going to bite it. They probably don't even know it's there. There's nothing to get their attention because there's so much grass there. So that is why I did not throw a follow-up bait back to those fish. Now, I've also seen that in clear water as well. In clear water with nothing around, no grass, no nothing, just rock banks. I've been on so many clear waters where I'm throwing topwaters, and I've seen a fish come from 5 or 6 foot down, right? You're throwing on the bank, and I've seen one come up here and try to explode on your bait, miss it. 99 out of 100 times, if they come from down there, that's where they go back to. So I can't tell you how many times I've seen one blow up and, I mean, streak off if they don't eat it. And most of the time they don't go back to where they came from. They just keep going. So by the time you made about 5 cranks and it missed, it's already 6-7 foot away. So you can imagine reeling in all that, picking up another bait and throwing where you think that fish blew up at. That fish is probably 15-20 foot away already. I can see it happen all the time on clear lakes. I know it happens on the dirty lakes as well. Now, we got this other video I did. It was me frog fishing. Different time of year. That happens a lot more in the summer and the fall, but it was in the springtime. It was clear. I was throwing it in fairly clear water. There wasn't a drop off. They weren't coming from far away. In the springtime, they tend to sit in that shallow water and stay there. They might come from a long ways away, but you're in shallow water and there's not a lot of cover around, right? Springtime, there's usually not a lot of cover because everything's starting to grow, right? If pads are growing, the pads aren't thick. If the grass is growing, it's not thick. Pencil reeds, they're not thick. There's so many things it's not thick cover, and they seem to roam around a lot more. A lot of reasons for that. Pre-spawners, spawners, post-spawners, they're eating perch, bluegills, they're garden fry. See, all those things, beds, garden fry, that keeps them in a spot, right? That keeps them in an area. They're not just roaming around crazy like, but beds, fry, that keeps them in an area. Brim beds keeps them in an area. So there's things there that are keeping them there. They're not actively searching anywhere they want to for bait. That's a different time. That's when I will throw back something to them. In that video of me frog fishing, here it is.
Got her. How awesome was that? That was the one that came up and it was after my popping perch. Oh, now he's got my popping perch accidentally because I left it in the water. You didn't have my, I'm gonna have a mess now. I had to cut something. That was pretty cool. thought she was gonna bite that palm perch.
And when they bite and they miss, I can still see them. They haven't gone anywhere. So I was able to pick up an ocho and throw it over there and catch them. Right? I was able to do that stuff. Different time of year, different type of stuff they are on, different reasons why they bit the topwater. So there are times I will throw back to them like that. It's more in the springtime. Other times of the year, depending on what it is, I might not throw back a bait to them. I might throw the same bait back. I think sometimes you have a better chance of throwing the same bait back. If you noticed, even in that same video, I threw in like some pads and it blew up, and I threw back it again in there and got bit.
Got him. Real skinny fish.
9 times out of 10, if I'm throwing a frog in over stuff, vegetation and things that have that hole, not the hole, but it's hollow underneath, I think that's your best bet. I think that's really what they want. You could flip in there, right? But I just think you're going to make a better presentation with the same bait. We've caught way more fish throwing the exact same bait in there than throwing something different. The other fish, if you noticed, were a lot more open, right? It was a lot more open for me to do that stuff. Like I said, I hate to say this, but it's come down to years and years and years of throwing at fish and not throwing at fish and knowing when to do it and when not to, right? And so if it's a stump and you throw a topwater over a stump, I think it can be 50-50. I think you can throw that topwater right back at him and catch him, or you can throw something by that stump. Chances are the fish was by the stump, and whatever you throw over there, it can see it and find it. And it's probably a lot more wide open. The back of a dock would be the same thing. A seawall, different things like that. I can see throwing a follow-up bait, but a lot of times where I'm getting bit, I'm just not able to do that. You're not able to make a good cast with a bait and present it the way you need to. It's why I'm literally throwing the baits I am. A lot of times, like say if I wanted to throw an ocho around and the ocho got bit, there's a good chance I just might not even throw the topwater because the ocho would catch all those same fish on the topwater, right? I'm having to throw the topwater for certain reasons. I was having to throw the swim jig and the shallow hybrid hunter for the reasons of the way the grass was growing. So yes, why didn't I throw the other baits? It's because the bait I was throwing was actually the best bait to come through the cover. Would it have been an ocho? Probably, if it wasn't so thick and they could actually find it and see it and the ocho would actually sink down into the grass, but it wouldn't, right? Could I have thrown a fluke or a caffeine shad around and caught fish? Yes, but once again, it's so thick that maybe they would have bit it, but I might not have put it in enough of their faces because it's so thick they might not have ever seen it. Like I said, I was throwing it in a giant, massive area. I was having to cover massive amounts of water to get bit. And so when you do that, when you throw a bait that doesn't grab their attention, you have their strike zone that you had here with the loud bait is going to become here with a quiet bait. So it's a risk you're willing to take sometimes. I think sometimes they're just fluke days. If I'd have stayed with it all day, I definitely would have caught a whole bunch more. I definitely would have. I just kept on fishing because I wanted to go do other stuff, and I changed it up and went over there. And I don't know if I put that in the video. I put it in another video where I catch an 8-pounder right off the bat doing something different. I got a little bit further away from that thick grass and caught him in some scattered grass. I caught that and a 5-pounder, but that's for a different story. So that is some of the tips on why I throw back to certain fish and why I don't. All right. Hope this helps, guys. See y'all.